The NFLandU podcast. Welcome to the NFLandU podcast for September 24th. I'm your host, Hayden Vassar, coming to you about 12 Eastern on a Tuesday. Wow, what a week 3 it was. A lot of exciting action, lots of news to get to today. Just a whole bunch of great stuff happened this weekend. For some teams, not a lot of others. Some teams, good stuff happened. Like I said, it's Tuesday morning, so we're going to recap all of the games that happened Sunday and Monday night. We're going to get to a little bit of news, and then we're going to, at the end of the show, do a preview for the Thursday night football game between the Eagles and the Packers. But before we get into all that, I just want to talk a little bit about a team that we weren't supposed to talk about today, and that's the Jacksonville Jaguars. Because it seems like the Jalen Ramsey story is not just going to go away. If you remember last week, he demanded a trade from the Jags, and the Jags' asking price for Jalen Ramsey was apparently, if you want him, you're going to have to give up 2 first-round picks to come get him. And all the talk was, it sounded like if a trade's going to happen, it's going to happen by Friday. Well, the Jacksonville Jags played Thursday night, won the game in dominant fashion, and then Friday came and there was no trade. And Saturday rolled around, still no trade, and it sounded like Shad Khan, the owner of the Jags, had apparently intervened and was taking Ramsey off the board to be traded. Because here's the thing, Jalen Ramsey is such a great player, you don't trade players like Jalen Ramsey. You just don't. Even if he's disgruntled, you just can't trade away a player like that. You have to find a way to make it work. And one could argue that maybe Ramsey was more upset about the fact that the Jags were 0-2, and then they won Thursday night, and now maybe things are a bit better. But apparently there was a meeting with Tom Coughlin, one of the front office officials for the Jags, and that's apparently what Ramsey has been so upset about, because apparently the meeting did not go well. And if you know anything about Tom Coughlin, he's a bit of a hard-nosed, no-nonsense guy. And Saturday came, still no trade. Sunday came, still no trade, and it seemed like everybody was going to put this to bed until about Sunday night. Jalen Ramsey apparently called the Jags and told them, I have the flu, so I'm not coming into work. You know when you call your boss when you just don't want to go in, even if you're not sick, you just don't want to go in, you don't want to deal with it, so you just call him and go, I can't make it in today, boss. It's too much. That's what it feels like. Now, I don't know if Jalen Ramsey is really sick or not, but this situation just reeks of, I'm not coming into work until I either get a new deal or you trade me. And it just feels so comical that he just called them and goes, yeah, I got the flu, I can't come in. It's just so stupid. Now, you would hope that the Jags could figure this out, because the Jags are right back in the thick of it after starting 0-2 and bouncing back with a big division win against the Titans. Sitting there at 1-2 in that division that's wide open. I mean, they're just one game back from Houston and Indianapolis, who each have 2 wins. So Jags are in the thick of it, and they could really use a player like Jalen Ramsey to help solidify that defense and maybe have a run that includes meaningful December football. Maybe. Like I said, that division is wide open, and it's up for grabs. 8 wins could seriously win that division. So we'll keep an eye on what's going on with Jalen Ramsey, and if hopefully he gets better, The flu is it's a real sucker, I tell you, yeah. It's just so stupid. All right, moving on to one more piece of news. The NFL refs over the weekend. All right, going back to the Thursday night game with Tennessee and Jacksonville. I know it was a long time ago, and it was a really ugly game. Just think back to it, though. There were so many flags in that first half. Twitter was absolutely killing the game and the refs. Tom Brady, in particular, tweeted out that he was turning off the game because he just couldn't watch it anymore, because there were so many flags. Well, after all of that, Al Riveron, the head of NFL officiating, apparently held a conference call on Saturday with all the NFL refs and told them, let's cut back on the flags a bit. And during Sunday, flags were apparently down by about 5%. Now, I personally didn't notice that much of a difference, but apparently they were down. And what I'm just going to push this out there. Tom Brady holds a bit more power than all of us realize. Because Twitter has been rough on refs before and killed refs for bad calls before, and it's never done anything. Tom Brady sends out one tweet, and all of a sudden there's conference calls being had, and flags are down 5%. I'm just saying, if Tom Brady really wanted to, he could accomplish change. I don't think he wants to, though, but he could if he wanted to. Like, think about it. If Tom Brady just came out and tweeted, we should get rid of Thursday Night Football, the NFL might get rid of Thursday Night Football. If he said the Monday after the Super Bowl should be a national holiday, it might become a national holiday. He apparently holds this kind of power to bring about change. He sends out one tweet, and all of a sudden the refs are like, we have to stop flags. Tom Brady said so on Twitter. It's just the damnedest thing. It really is. And then the last piece of news that was, I guess, breaking this morning, Cam Newton apparently has a lymphrantic injury in his ankle, and the Panthers believe he could be out a while. Quote. That's what they said, a while. Whatever a while means, 3 to 4 weeks, maybe a couple more than that. It's not a very accurate definition. But we're going to talk about the Panthers a bit more later when we talk about Kyle Allen. And maybe the Panthers might have a quarterback competition on their hands. Oh yeah, that's called a tease, ladies and gentlemen, to keep you interested for the rest of the show. Alright, so that wraps up news for right now. And we're going to move into the Week 3 recap. But before we do that, I just want to say we went 8-8 in picks last week. First time going 8-8. Feels solid. Feels not bad, but it also doesn't feel great. It just is, you know. Now I feel bad for all those teams that go 8-8. Alright, so the first game up, we're going to go in order from the way we did it in our preview podcast. So we're going to do the 1 Eastern games. We've been through this before. You know how this goes. And we're going to talk about any news from the teams that have happened in those games. So that means first one up, Dolphins and Cowboys. Cowboys win this one 31-6. Dallas moves to 3-0. Dolphins fall to 0-3. And man, this was a weird game in the first half. It was really weird watching it because Dallas just felt like they were either overlooking the Dolphins and focusing ahead for the Saints next week, or they were just flat out not caring. Because you could look at that first half and realistically say the Dolphins' offense was better than Dallas's offense. It felt like Josh Rosen was making better throws than Dak Prescott. And speaking of Josh Rosen was making a difference in that first half. The Dolphins just felt different offensively. They were making drops and not really helping him a lot, but watching that first half, it really reinforced this opinion that I've had for a while that Josh Rosen can start in this league. He just needs some help. But like I said, it was a really weird first half. The Cowboys were only up 10-6 at half against the worst team in the league. And if you watch that first half, there is a legitimate argument you could have made where the Dolphins should have probably been up like 14-10. There was that drop by Preston Williams in the end zone from a really beautifully thrown pass by Rosen. I think in the second quarter, then the Dolphins get back into the red zone with Kenyon Drake, and then he fumbles the ball. I mean, it's just stupid mistakes wiping points off the board for the Dolphins. But then, and then there was that Dak Prescott's pass that got intercepted in the first half. He said after the game that he got really greedy. He wanted a bit more than he probably should have gone for, and that's why he threw that interception. But yeah, it was just really weird first half. Dolphins were getting frisky with it, and the Cowboys, they just felt like they weren't into it. They felt like a very, it's the Dolphins, so who really cares kind of thing, you know? That's what it felt like watching it. Then the second half came around, and the Cowboys lit it up, scoring 21 unanswered points to close out the game on a 21-0 run. And the offense went back to being the offense that we've seen the entire season. And that's an offense that has over 400 total yards of offense a game and is averaging over 30 points a game. When the Cowboys are on offensively, like in the second half in this game, they're one of the better offenses in the league right now. I mean, if you look in every statistical category, they're at worst number 5 in either total offense, passing yards per game, points per game, rushing per game. They're one of the best offenses in the league right now when they want to be. Now, this is an example of when they want to be, because in the first half, they weren't. They didn't want to be. They were overlooking the Dolphins. Speaking of the Cowboys' prolific offense, this was the first time since 1998, October 4th of that year, that the Cowboys had 2 different running backs rush for over 100 yards. Ezekiel Elliott had 125 yards on 19 rushes. Tony Pollard had 103 yards on 13 rushes and a touchdown for him. And the Cowboys can just beat you in different ways now. It used to be that they just rush, you know, like an offense out of the 1940s, but now it's an offense that rushing isn't their first instinct. Now they can pass it. Now they can pass it deep and beat you in a multitude of different ways. It's not just throw it deep to Amari Cooper. It's, hey, maybe run this crossing route down the middle with Randall Cobb or something of that nature. There was a point when both Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott lined up in the backfield at the same time. It's just, they're throwing so much out there, and it's misdirections, and it's shifting. It's a lot to take in right now for defenses. And I'm telling you, this Cowboys offense can be good. It's just when it wants to be. Just when it wants to be, it can be good. Dak Prescott is still balling out, only 2 interceptions on the year, and you could really argue that the first one in last week against Washington really wasn't his fault. It got tipped. This one, he got a little greedy, but he's been playing very, very well for the most part, and he's going to get a really, really good contract because of it. The Dolphins, on the other hand, it just, I don't know, it's just, Josh Rosen is going to make them slightly better, but they're still the worst team in the league. They're still 0-3. I don't know. I really like Josh Rosen, and I want him to succeed, but he's not going to do much in Miami. He's just not. That team is just destined for historic failure right now. That's all the Dolphins are destined for. And you feel bad for Josh Rosen because he's going to go out there and put it all on the line to help his team win, and then they're just going to replace him at the end of the year when they draft a quarterback at number 1 overall. Just feel bad for the kid. Looking at his final stat line, Rosen went 18 of 39 for 200 yards. That's his total stat line. He could have had a touchdown like we mentioned earlier, but Preston Williams just had to drop that ball. And there were a couple drops in this game that the Dolphins could have had, but like I said, in the second half, it was just all Dallas. 21-0 in the second half. And if you're getting outscored 21-0 in the second half, you usually lose those games. Dak Prescott's final stat line, he went 19 of 32 for 245 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, as I mentioned. Amari Cooper, 6 receptions, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like I said, this Dallas offense is lethal right now, and we're going to see. They've been playing lesser teams so far. They played the Giants week 1, and we're going to talk about the Giants a bit later. They're a different team now than they were in week 1. Beat the Giants in week 1, Washington last week, and the Dolphins this week. So combined, they've played 3 teams so far that have only won 1 game this season. They've been beaten up on bad teams. And they're finally going to play an actual team next week in the Saints, so we're going to see how good Dallas really is. All right, once again, Dallas wins this one 31-6. Cowboys move to 3-0. Moving on to Jets at the Patriots. This one was ugly. Oh, God, it was ugly. Patriots win this one 30-14. Patriots move to 3-0. Jets fall to 0-3. It was all Patriots from the word go, ladies and gentlemen. It was just pure domination. I'm going to read you Luke Falk, the Jets quarterback for this game, his stat line. You ready for this? 98 yards, 1 interception, 5 sacks. 98 total yards for Luke Falk. It's bad in New York right now. And Le'Veon Bell, I think, had like 30 to 40 yards total in this game. The Patriots' defense is for real. Now, you look at the score and you see 30 to 14 and you think, oh, wow. Well, then how did the Jets score? They scored because the Patriots muffed a punt and the Jets recovered and scored. And then in the fourth quarter, the Patriots put in their backup quarterback because they were mauling the Jets so bad. They put in Jarrett Stidham and he threw a pick six. And the Jets ran that in for a score. The Jets' offense scored 0 points in this game. The Jets' defense and special teams scored 14 in this game. The Patriots' defense might seriously be the best in the league. We're through week 3, and they've given up 3 total points. 3 points through 3 weeks. Now they've played 3 teams that have not won a single game. They beat Steelers in week 1, Dolphins last week, and the Jets this week. So that's 3 teams that combined for 0-9 so far. But it's still a really good defense. Let's see here. Devin McCourty, the Patriots defender, he leads the league with 3 interceptions. He has 1 per game at this point. He's literally averaging 1 a game so far this season. And that Patriots defense is, I think it might even be better than it was last season. And Tom Brady is out here literally defying time. I mean, September and October have usually been times where the Patriots struggle and look a bit off. It has been the last few years, but the Patriots are looking in Super Bowl form right now. Here's Tom Brady's stat line. 28 of 42 for 306 yards, 2 touchdowns. Oh, yeah, and he didn't play the fourth quarter, if I remember correctly. Josh Gordon, the Patriots wide receiver, he got a little banged up. He was taking some hard hits in this game. He came out a couple times, but he finished it and made a bunch of tough grabs. He ended up 6 catches for 83 yards. Julian Edelman had 7 catches for 62 yards and a touchdown, and I think he left the game early too. Yeah, he had X-rays on his ribs because he left with a rib injury in this game. But the Patriots, I'm telling you, nobody's stopping the Patriots. The Chiefs might get lucky and beat them in the regular season, but when it gets to the playoffs, nobody's stopping this team. They're this good now, and we're not even in January yet. Imagine what they're going to be like when they turn on the playoff mode. This team is scary. And like I said, they only allowed 3 points, and they sacked Luke Falk 5 times. And it's a good thing that the Jets are having, if I remember correctly, they have their bye week in week 4, which is this coming week. They really need it. And there's talk that Sam Darnold could be back by week 5 against the Eagles, and they really need him. But Jets fans, I want to just propose this to you. I just want to propose this to you. Luke Falk is bad. Very bad. And if Sam Darnold comes back too early and gets hurt again and is out for an even longer period of time, you don't want Luke Falk being your quarterback. So what I am going to propose is something I know a lot of people aren't going to like, and a lot of people are going to get mad over. I'm seriously, just think about it, just think about it, just think about it, all right? Before you even say anything, just think about it, all right? Instead of Luke Falk being your backup going forward, why not Colin Kaepernick? I'm just saying. He just comes in, sits on the bench, and if Darnold gets hurt again, you don't have to watch Luke Falk anymore. That's all I'm saying. Because Trevor Siemian's out for the year with that messed up ankle. So if Darnold does get hurt again this season, or gets mono again, you don't have to watch Luke Falk play again. Because nobody wants to see that again. Nobody. So once again, Patriots win this one, go to 30-14. Patriots win 30-14. Patriots go to 3-0. And hey, next week, Patriots at Buffalo, a matchup of 2 undefeated teams. That might be interesting to watch. And Jets fall to 0-3. Jets have a bye week next week, and they desperately need it. All right, moving. Speaking of the Bills, moving on to Bengals at Bills. Bills win this one 21-17. Bills move on to 3-0. Cincinnati falls to 0-3. It's the first time since 2011 that the Bills have started 3-0. And man, the Bills, they they're interesting. They're an interesting little bunch. Early on in this game, the Bills jumped out to a big lead, and if I remember correctly, it was like 14-0 at halftime. And then the Bengals started clawing their way back into this game to tie the game up at 14, and then take the lead in the fourth quarter to go up 17-14. And the Bills get the ball back late in the game, and Josh Allen hits Dawson Knox, the tight end for Buffalo, and he just books it downfield. He has a 49-yard gain, absolutely trucks a Cincinnati defender, set up the go-ahead score by the ageless one Frank Gore with 1:59 left in the game. So the Bills take up 21-17. Andy Dalton gets the ball back, and they start driving. They get into Buffalo's 28 with 20 seconds left on 3rd and 5. Andy Dalton's pass over the middle gets tipped and picked off by Tre'Davious White, who had another interception on the day. So he had 2 picks of Andy Dalton on the day, and it seals the Buffalo win. Big time come from behind win for Buffalo, who is really feeling themselves right now. This Buffalo team is just weird to watch because they're not a team that's going to put up a lot of points. It really feels like their offense is probably going to cap out at 21 points a game. It just feels like that's what they're going to do. But when a defense can hold a team to like 17 points, that's going to be okay. But for the most part, the Bills' defense was holding back the Bengals. The Bengals had no offense in the first half. Like I said, it was 14-0 at halftime. There was no offense. But then in the second half, the Bengals woke up offensively, and they were able to shut down Buffalo. The Bengals outscored the Bills in the second half 17-7. And it just wasn't enough for the Bengals to win the game. Time of possession in this one. You ready for this? Buffalo had 36 minutes and 54 seconds in time of possession. Cincinnati had 23 minutes and 6 seconds. It's a difference of about 13 minutes in total time of possession. In this game, Buffalo forced 4 turnovers, and they already have 7 on the year, so they're a bit turnover happy right now. And they were able to hold Cincinnati to 3-11 on third downs. But thankfully for the Cincinnati offense, who we talked about it being so pass happy on Friday's podcast, Joe Mixon finally had his game this season. He had 15 rushes for 61 yards, and he had 2 receptions for 34 yards and a touchdown. And he finally was able to break out of his shell, because if I remember correctly, he had like 27 total yards of offense through 2 weeks in this season. So being able to put up a stat line of about 98 yards, 95 yards, and a touchdown in a game probably felt pretty good to him, even if they did come out on a losing effort. But going back to the Bengals being such a pass-heavy offense, they're the 3rd best passing offense in the league. And Andy Dalton has thrown over 900 passing yards so far, and that's 2nd in the league so far. He's only behind Patrick Mahomes because Patrick Mahomes has already thrown for over 1,000 yards in this season. So like I said, the Bengals have an air raid offense of just slinging it everywhere, but it was nice to see that they got Joe Mixon involved because he just felt lost through the first 2 weeks of the season. Looking at Dalton's final stat line, he went 20 of 36 for 249 yards, a touchdown, 2 sacks, and 2 interceptions. Like I said, the Bengals have an apparent prolific passing attack right now. It just doesn't feel like it. They just feel lost right now. Sitting at 0-3, and they got a big game coming up this coming Monday against the also winless Pittsburgh Steelers. Somebody's got to win that game. Nice little cornered animal game. But looking at the Bills, their defense is solid and their offense is just doing enough. And that feels like what that team's going to be. They're not going to be a team that hangs 30 points on you. It just doesn't feel like they are. Josh Allen, he went 23 of 36 for 243 yards, a touchdown, 1 pick, and 1 sack. So they kept him pretty clean. The ageless one, Frank Gore, 14 rushes, 76 yards, and a touchdown. And like we mentioned, Dawson Knox, their tight end, 3 receptions, 67 yards, and a touchdown. Funny enough about Dawson Knox, that was his first touchdown since junior high school in Tennessee. Dude has gone years without catching a touchdown and finally did it today. Did it Sunday. So good for him. But like I said, the Bills are undefeated and they're a little frisky. They're a little weird. Their defense is solid. Turnovers is what their bread and butter seems to be. And bend but don't break. So far, I think they're averaging giving up around 17 points a game. Somewhere around there. And that's okay when your offense is going to top out at 21 if your defense is only giving up 17. But it's going to be a bit different because like we mentioned a couple minutes ago, the Patriots are coming to Buffalo next week. So that's going to be a very interesting game to watch. We're going to see how for real the Bills are. The Bills, I'm just going to tell you now, the Bills aren't going to win that game. But we're going to see how for real they are. If they get mollywopped 54-10, then maybe they're a bit overhyped. But if they hang in there for most of the game, maybe Buffalo has something. But like I said, Buffalo wins this one, 21-17. Bills stay undefeated, move to 3-0. Cincy falls to 0-3, and they need a win. All right, moving on to our next game. Broncos at Packers. Packers win this one 27-16. Packers stay undefeated and move to 3-0. Broncos fall to 0-3, and it is not happy times in Denver right now. This is the Broncos' first time starting a season at 0-3 since 1990. It's either 1998 or 1999. I think it's 99 because that was the year after not Joe Flacco. We'll talk about Flacco here in a second, but John Elway retired, and that team started 0-4 before ending up having a 6-win season, and it feels like the Broncos might start 0-4. They just cannot figure this thing out defensively. But the Packers have figured things out defensively. Packers defense absolutely dominated in this game. They had 6 sacks on Joe Flacco and forced 3 turnovers. It was all Packers in this game. Preston Smith on the Packers defensive line, he had 3 of those sacks on Joe Flacco. One man had 3 sacks in this game. So good for him. Green Bay, it was all Green Bay for most of this game. The Denver offense was hanging around for most of the game, but then there was a third quarter interception by Joe Flacco, and that just took them out of it. But the Broncos were trailing for all of this game. Because Green Bay opened up with a 40-yard pass to Marquez Valdes-Scantling for a touchdown by Rodgers, and the Packers never looked back. They never relinquished the lead. Rodgers finished with 17 of 29 for 235 yards and a touchdown. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, like we just mentioned, had 6 catches for 99 yards and a touchdown. And this Packers offense, it can score points, but it just can't. It's not putting up a lot of yards. Get this, the Packers are 28th in yards per game right now. 28th. You know who's at 27th? The Tennessee Titans. That is not good. So the offense, what I'm saying is the offense for the Packers is still very much a work in progress, and it needs to get better. It can score points, like we saw, but it'll score points in bunches and then go away, which is odd for Green Bay. Because like last week, they scored 21 points in the first half, nothing after that. And then today they scored 27, but they don't put up a lot of yards. You can't be this a bottom 5 offense in terms of yards and expect your defense to carry the load. Even though this defense is legit. This defense is very much legit. They haven't surrendered a first quarter touchdown this entire year. What is it? They're number 1 in turnover differential right now. I'm just trying to flip to my stats real quick. And they're tied for 3rd in the league with sacks right now because they've already accumulated 12 sacks throughout 3 games. So the Packers defense is very much legit right now. Their offense is just still a work in progress, and that offense is allowed to be a work in progress because it's still early and that defense is carrying them. But when we get into December and this team is still hanging around, the offense is going to have to be better. But if you're expecting them to be some prolific offense that, is putting up 400 yards a game, I'm not saying they're going to be that. What I'm arguing is just don't be a bottom 5 offense is what I'm arguing. If you're floating around like 15, I think that'll be perfect for how good this defense is playing under Mike Pettin. But just don't be a bottom 5 offense. That's all I'm asking. And I think a really fun fact about this game is that Aaron Rodgers was kept incredibly clean this entire game. And in fact, after the game, he said, this was probably the cleanest I've been through an entire game my entire career. The Broncos had one quarterback hit the entire game. The pass rush issues are continuing in Denver, and it is not good. They had one quarterback hit the entire game. Broncos still have no sacks. The Giants, in one game, had more sacks than the Broncos have had all year on Sunday. The Dolphins, in one game, had more sacks than the Broncos have had all year. The Broncos signed the Dolphins signed Taco Charlton halfway through the week, and he got a sack in the game. That's more than Denver has had through the entire season. It is not good in Denver, and you hear them talk about it after the game. Guys like Von Miller, after the game, they just sound just so down on themselves right now. He's talking about he's just trying to do his job right, and he can't do it. It's just so confusing to just watch all of this talent on the Denver defense that we're just used to them being solid defensively, just not be solid at all. Being the exact opposite. Right now, Denver is one of the worst defenses in the league right now. And their offense, who is built to, run the ball and not be a prolific offense that puts up a lot of points, is being left out to dry because the Denver offense, if you're hoping that they have to score, 30 points to win a game, I don't know what to tell you because it's just the way that John Elway likes his offense and quarterback. They're not meant to score a lot of points. I mean, look at Joe Flacco's stat line. He went 20 of 29, 213 yards, 1 pick, 6 sacks. He was under duress a lot of this game and probably made some bad reads because of it. But this Denver offense, it just isn't meant to score points. It's just not. If this defense can find a way to step up and, hold some teams back, they can win games. But I'm talking games that are like 21-17. If you're having to score a lot of points for the Broncos, it's not good. Phillip Lindsay, the Broncos running back, had a much better game this week. He had 21 rushes, 81 yards, 2 touchdowns. But the Broncos just feel lost. They just feel so dead right now. And if it comes down to the Broncos defense having to make a stop to win a game, I just don't believe in them, and that's sad. Because I had tremendous hopes for that defense coming into the year, and they are just not there. We're going to talk about the Packers a bit more later when we get to Thursday Night Football, but the Packers are solid right now with that defense, and they're making a real case to be NFC North contenders. All right, moving on to our next game, Falcons at Colts. Colts win this one 27-24 in a really fun game to watch, if I'm honest with you. This was really fun to just watch out of the corner of my eye. Colts moved to 2-1, and the Falcons fall to 1-2 so far in the season. This is the first time that the Colts have won their home opener since 2013. Bit of a weird fact for them, but yeah, good enough. Jacoby Brissett, the Colts quarterback, absolutely balled out in this game. We had talked about on the preview show on Friday that Jacoby hadn't thrown 200 passing yards in a game this season. He had over 200 passing yards before halftime and had already thrown 2 touchdowns. He had completed his first 16 passes, and the Colts were up 20-3 at halftime. Everything was going right for the Colts. Everything. T.Y. Hilton was balling out. Jacoby was hitting everybody. He spread the ball around beautifully, and the Colts were looking like they were about to cruise to another big win. But then once the second half started, things flipped, and it became all Atlanta Falcons. T.Y. Hilton left the game at halftime, I think due to a hip injury. No, it was a hamstring, my bad. And Atlanta outscored Indianapolis 21-7 in the second half. But Jacoby Brissett led a fourth quarter touchdown drive to extend the lead. If I remember correctly, Matt Ryan hit Julio to bring the game to within 3, but they just never got the ball back. And Indy runs out the clock, and Indy moves to 2-1. Falcons started slow in this game, and that's really what did them in. You had a ferocious second half comeback, just not be enough. And I've got an interesting fact for you that people may not know about the Falcons and Matt Ryan. Did you know Matt Ryan currently leads the league in interceptions right now? It is. I've been getting my stats from ESPN.com, and it says that the Falcons have 6 interceptions and the Dolphins have 6 interceptions. But the Dolphins have 6 interceptions because they have 2 quarterbacks who have combined for that many. Matt Ryan has thrown 6 on his own so far this season. And that's just really crazy to me. I don't really remember a time when Matt Ryan has led the league in interceptions. I know it's early and it's probably not going to be like that at the end of the year, but still, it just feels weird. And this was supposed to be the moment for Atlanta. Drew Brees is out, Cam Newton is out, and all you have to really worry about is Tampa Bay. This was supposed to be the moment the Falcons really rounded up together and soared to a height and start making some noise in the NFC South, and they just blow it. And they're sitting there at 1-2. And the rest of the team, the rest of that division with backup quarterbacks is kind of starting to build a lead. Just saying. It was just hard to watch for this Falcons team, who you felt were still riding high from that win on Sunday night against Philadelphia, and you thought that they had turned the corner, but no, they just come out and drop an egg in this one. But a tough blow for Atlanta in the first half. Safety Keanu Neal has apparently torn his Achilles, and that was tough watching that one, because if you remember last season, Keanu Neal tore his ACL in the first game of the season last year and missed all of last year, and he gets 3 games into this season, tears his Achilles, and is done for the year. So it just feels rough for that man. And by the way, the refs in that game, they flagged Keanu Neal. They threw a flag because when he tore his Achilles, he threw his helmet in frustration. Like, come on, refs, come on. Dude just tore his Achilles. Come on, man. We know why he's throwing the helmet. Because he's hurt and he knows his season's over. Don't flag the man. Come on. So the Falcons have apparently brought in a couple safeties today on Tuesday to work out to see if they can come in and replace them, because Keanu Neal was their starting safety. But looking at the Colts now, the Colts are for real. And can we please stop talking about Jacoby Brissett like he's a backup? He's not playing like a backup. He's been in that system for 2 years. He knows what Frank Reich wants to do, and he understands the ins and outs of that system. Here's Jacoby Brissett's stat line. You ready for this? 28 of 37 for 310 yards and 2 touchdowns. He balled out in this game. He's not just a backup. He's a serious starter in that offense, and Frank Reich believes in him. If you watch them play, they're playing as if Andrew Luck never left. They're playing as if Andrew Luck is still out there. That's how they're still running this offense. They're going full force, pedal to the metal, like Andrew never left. Because they know Jacoby can do it. And all of a sudden, the Colts are sitting there at 2-1, tied for the top of their division with the Texans. Colts could seriously be in charge, not in charge, in running for that division. They could be. Like I said, I think 8 wins can win that division. And the Texans' offensive line is bad, even though they played great Sunday. And we're going to get to that, but it might come down to maybe Houston versus Indianapolis late in the season to determine who wins that division. But, Jacksonville is going to have something to say about that. We aren't going to talk about Tennessee, though. We ain't going to talk about them. Another piece of note about this game, Colts safety Malik Hooker apparently tore his meniscus in the game, is having surgery to get the meniscus trimmed, and he's apparently out 4 to 6 weeks. And that's a major blow to that secondary, who is entire defense has been very good so far this season. T.Y. Hilton, the Colts wide receiver who left at halftime, he had 8 catches for 65 yards and a touchdown in the first half. And then Marlon Mack, the running back. Remember how we talked about how the Colts have mostly been doing things through the run game on Friday's podcast? Well, they did it all through the passing game, because Marlon Mack had 16 rushes for 74 yards and a touchdown. And now the Colts showed you that they can win in multiple ways. They can beat you passing, and they can beat you by running. So the Colts aren't a pushover, is what I'm getting at. And don't just look at Jacoby as a backup, is what I'm saying. He's their starter. He is not a backup. Looking at Matt Ryan, he had a pretty good day. When I said he led the league with 6 interceptions, he only threw 1 in this game. Matt Ryan played pretty good for the most part. Completed 29 out of 34 passes, 3 touchdowns, only 1 pick. No sacks, which is really good for a team that had a banged-up O-line going against a Colts team that had but they had already had 8 sacks through the year. So it was really good for the Atlanta offensive line to keep Ryan up and steady. And Julio Jones had 8 catches for 128 yards and 1 touchdown. But like I said, this was really the moment for the Falcons to step up and really just take control of their division, and they just didn't. And now they're sitting there at 1-2. Down there with the Buccaneers and the Panthers, and the Saints move on to 2-1, and we're going to get to them later. But we're going to keep an eye on Atlanta. They might just be a flippy-flop team that looks good one week and then just can't pull it out the next. But another piece of note about this game, we've been following Adam Vinatieri throughout the season so far, and he had a bounce-back game. He completed all 5 of his kicks, including a 49-yard field goal, and it looks like the future Hall of Famer found his mojo again. And that was just really nice to see, because Vinatieri had been struggling for most of the season. He had missed like 5 out of 8 kicks through 2 games, so it was really, really cool to see him bounce back and hit every single kick in this game to help give the Colts a win. And that was just good for him, because remember, he was thinking about retiring a week ago. And now he's sitting there and he's got his mojo back. So good for Adam Vinatieri, and good for the Colts. They moved to 2-1 again after beating the Falcons 27-24. And moving on to, in my opinion, one of the big upsets of the weekend. Lions at Eagles. Lions win this one 27-24. Lions are still undefeated at 2-0-1. And the Eagles fall to 1-2. This is the first time the Lions have been unbeaten through 3 weeks since 2011, just like the Bills. It's becoming a weekly pattern for the Eagles. Another slow start, and more injuries just flat out doom them, and they can't complete a second half comeback. Because that's exactly what happened in this game. They were down 20-10 at halftime after a Jamal Agnew 100-yard kickoff return and a couple one Matthew Stafford touchdown later, and the Eagles are down again. Then in the second half, they clawed all the way back to get within striking distance of the Lions. There was that really super weird Doug Peterson, the head coach of the Eagles, decision to go for it on 4th down, deep in their own territory. I'm talking like they're around the 25 or 30-yard line, and they're going for it with they have all their timeouts, and it's before the 2-minute warning, and Doug Peterson goes for it, and they don't get it. So now all of a sudden, the Lions are knocking on the red zone, already up a couple points in the 4th quarter, and it just feels like a disastrous decision to go for it. Well, the Lions don't get anything out of it, and they go for a field goal. They set up a 46-yard field goal with Matt Prater, their kicker, and the kick gets blocked. Rasul Douglas picks up the ball, runs it all the way back to the Lions 22 on the other side of the field, and you're thinking, oh God, the Eagles are going to complete the comeback. This is the most Lions thing possible to do and choke in this game in Philadelphia. But a flag gets thrown on the return. It's a block in the back on the Eagles, and they get pushed back to midfield. Carson Wentz and the offense can't convert on 1st down. They turn it over, and the Lions stand tall in Philadelphia and win the game. And it's wow. The Eagles are very sloppy right now. They've got injuries everywhere. They had 9 dropped passes from their wide receivers in this game, including a couple big ones from Nelson Aguilar, who we'll get to in a moment. But I'm impressed with the Lions. I can't believe that. We're 3 weeks into the season, and the Lions are unbeaten. They've beaten the Chargers and Eagles, 2 teams I thought they couldn't beat. And they've stringed a couple wins together, and now all of a sudden the Lions are really feeling themselves. Because when you saw that the blocked punt return, I honestly sat there and watched it happen live. I live in Michigan. I'm reminding you of this, so I am well aware of how Lions fans feel. And I could already hear the takes coming. Oh, this is the most Lions thing ever. Of course they let the block punt go all the way back. Of course they did. It's the Lions. Only the Lions would do it. But then they won the game. And that just feels like the most un-Lions thing ever. The Lions, historically, the last 20 years, have not been a good franchise. They just haven't. They haven't won a playoff game since, like, the 90s. They just haven't been good. It's mostly been destitute and negativity. And now, all of a sudden, they're sitting here through week 3 at undefeated. And Lions fans and the team are feeling themselves. Matthew Stafford went 18 of 32 for 201 yards and a touchdown. Marvin Jones, the wide receiver. I know we talked about Kenny Golladay on Friday, but Marvin Jones is a very good complimentary piece. Had 6 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown. Like, the Lions didn't do a lot of prolific stuff in this game. They just did enough to win. And that Jamal Agnew kickoff return for a touchdown really helped them. I just think it was more Philadelphia shooting themselves in the foot than the Lions absolutely winning the game. If you feel what I'm saying, because I'm not trying to take away what the Lions did. Going into Philadelphia and winning a game is always a tough thing to do. But I mean, just look at the Eagles. They had 9 drops on this game. They had 3 offensive pass interference calls. The last one coming on the 4th down play that ended the game, where I think it was Darren Sproles absolutely shoved off the Lions defender on the pass, and that's what pushed them back even more. But 9 drops, 2 fumbles, 3 offensive pass interferences. The Eagles are just sloppy right now, and they cannot keep doing these slow first half starts in these games and expect to come back in the second half every time. You just can't, especially with all the injuries you already have. All right, I'm going to read you the halftime scores from the last 3 Eagles games. All right? 20-7, down 20-7 in week 1 against Washington. They would come back to win that game. Then in week 2, down 10-6 against Atlanta. They would lose that game. Then in this game, down 20-10 against the Lions. That's 2 games so far this season where they're down double digits at halftime. You can't expect a team with this many injuries, or even a healthy team, to always have to come back against that. And the Eagles suffered even more losses in this game. They lost left tackle Andre Dillard, their first-round draft pick, to a knee injury in this game, which helped attribute to Carson Wentz getting sacked 3 times. And the inconsistent offensive line play in that game. Carson Wentz, to his credit, he finished 19 of 36 for 259 yards and 2 touchdowns. Nelson Aguilar, who we talked about with the fumbles and the drops, he had 8 catches for 50 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Nelson Aguilar is their number 1 guy right now because Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey are still out. It's Nelson Aguilar and a couple other no-name guys. That's their wide receiver room right now. It's thin. It's razor thin. And listen, I know people are killing Aguilar and the Eagles for dropping passes right now, but you got to understand, when you suddenly promote your number 3 wide receiver to the number 1 position, it's not going to go smoothly, and it's going to go bad. It just is. And they have a Thursday night game coming up where they have to go to Lambeau Field to play an undefeated Packers team whose defense is rock solid right now. Things could go from bad to worse for the Eagles, who are sitting at 1-2 and staring down the barrel of a 1-3 start. I mean, the Eagles have games coming up in October. They have a 3-game road stretch where they play at the Vikings, at the Cowboys, at the Bills. things could go very south very fast for this Eagles team. And their main problem right now, they need to get healthy for the Eagles. That's what they need. And I had really high hopes for this Eagles team. I thought they could win the NFC East this year over Dallas. But now it's starting to look like maybe they get a wild card. But right now they need to get healthy. If they can get some wide receivers back, like Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson back. I don't know if they play this week. I have my doubts on if they will or not. But if they can get them back next week, it could really help boost this Eagles team. And the Lions are feeling themselves, like I said. Their defense is feeling a bit proud, pounding its chest, and Matthew Stafford in that offense is they're happy. They're like we mentioned, the Lions want to be a running team. They've given plenty of opportunities to Kerryon Johnson, their running back. He just hasn't made anything done with them. I think he had like 20 rushes in this game and had like 54 yards. And that's a running theme so far this season. The Lions want to establish the run, they just can't get it done. But the Lions got a pretty big test coming up this weekend because the Chiefs are coming to Detroit to play. And we'll find out how good the Lions really are. Once again, another litmus test for an undefeated team. And once again, Lions win this one at 27-24 and move to 2-0-1. Stay undefeated. Lions undefeated. Hey. Eagles fall to 1-2. Moving on to Raiders at Vikings. Vikings win this one 34-14. Vikings improve to 2-1. Raiders fall to 1-2. And this was a really good bounce back game for the Vikings. Get this. This was Kirk Cousins, the Vikings quarterback. This was his first game as a Viking where he did not get sacked through the entire game, which was good for him. But the Vikings did what they wanted to do. They rushed a bunch, and their defense played rock solid. That is their firm-held philosophy, and that's what they're going to do for the rest of the season. The Vikings had over 200 rushing yards. They had 211 total rushing yards in this game. Dalvin Cook helped attribute to that. He had 16 rushes for 110 yards and a touchdown. Kirk Cousins, like we said, the Vikings' philosophy is the less the quarterback does, the better. And that's what they did in this game. 15 of 21 in passing for 174 yards and a touchdown for Kirk Cousins. It was a very bad day at the office for the Raiders and Derek Carr. Derek Carr went 27 of 34 for 242 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and 4 sacks. Darren Waller for the Raiders had 13 catches, 134 yards, but a lot of that came in garbage time when the game was well out of hand. I'm telling you, it was all Vikings from the get-go in this game. And the Raiders are in a bit of a tough spot right now because after last week's game against Kansas City, they don't have a home game until November. Yeah. So they're going to go through all of October with road games. They were supposed to have a home game, the Raiders, but they agreed to do the London series where they go over and play a team in London. So, yeah, they don't have a home game until November, which is going to be very tough for a Raiders team that feels like they really need a reprieve right now. They won week 1, which was a really good feeling for them after all the Antonio Brown stuff. And then they get absolutely bodied by Kansas City, which in no way says anything about the Raiders, in my opinion, because everybody's going to get bodied by Kansas City. And then they just get flat out dominated again by the Vikings. The Raiders really need a reprieve right now. They desperately need a reprieve, and they got the Colts coming up next week, and I don't know if they get one. But Vikings win this one 34-14. It was just a very ugly, dominant game for the Vikings. And the Raiders are just kind of fallen by the wayside after starting really hot in week 1. All right, moving on to our last early game, Ravens and Chiefs. Chiefs win this one 34-28. This was a kind of a weird game to watch. Chiefs improve to 3-0. Ravens take their first loss on the season, fall to 2-1. And funny enough, Lamar Jackson has only lost twice in the regular season since becoming the Ravens starter. Both losses have come by the Kansas City Chiefs. It was weird watching this game because in the first half, the Ravens are going for it a lot. They're going for it on fourth down. They're trying 2-point conversions. They're just letting it all hang out there. It was like watching a Madden game in real life. John Harbaugh was holding nothing back, and it was fun to see. I like aggressiveness from coaches because I'm a Cowboys fan and I have an ultra conservative head coach. So I like seeing aggressiveness from other teams, but sometimes you can be a bit ultra aggressive and it can hurt you. And I think that's what we saw from the Ravens. A bunch of ultra aggressiveness early on kind of hurt them in the second half, and they were behind. I mean, I need to ask a question. What is with Kansas City in the second quarter? Last week they scored a bunch in the second quarter against the Raiders, and this week they did it again. They had 23 points in the second quarter. 23 points! And that's just too much for Lamar Jackson to overcome despite a furious second half comeback by Lamar. Lamar didn't have the greatest day from a stats perspective. He went 22 of 43 for 267 yards and 3 sacks. He had 8 rushes for 46 yards and a touchdown. He didn't throw for many touchdown passes, but he was making big plays with his arm to keep the Ravens moving and downfield. I remember there was one pass where he scrambled to his right and threw the ball to his left across the entire field. And it's something you never want to see a quarterback do, but Lamar does it and it works. It's something only he and Patrick Mahomes, I feel like, can do. But the reason why Lamar Jackson didn't have a lot of touchdowns in this game is because Mark Ingram was stealing them. Mark Ingram had 16 rushes, 103 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 3 touchdowns. Mark Ingram showing he's still got a lot left in the tank. But it felt like that when it would get close to the goal line, Mark Ingram would just poach a touchdown away from Lamar Action Jackson. But I feel like we learned a bit about the Ravens. We learned that, in my opinion, that they aren't quite ready to being one of the big teams in the NFL or even in the AFC, but they're close. They're real close. They had to go to Kansas City and they had to duel with the guy who's going to win the MVP again this year. And Lamar kept him in it. I mean, they only lost by 5 points. He kept him in it. But speaking about the Chiefs, Mahomes in that offense can literally score from anywhere. I have the NFL Red Zone network, and if you don't have it, you should get it because it's like the greatest thing God ever made. And there's a running joke by the host on that show, Andrew Siciliano, that the Chiefs' red zone is anywhere on the field. They can score from anywhere, and they literally can. The moment they have the ball, they're already in the red zone. And they did it again in this game with Mecole Hardman. I mean, the Chiefs were like literally on their own 25-yard line, and they just throw a pass to Mecole Hardman, and he's gone. Mecole Hardman had 2 catches, 97 yards, and a touchdown, most of that on the touchdown run by Patrick Mahomes, who finished 27 of 37 for 374 yards, 3 touchdowns, and only 1 sack. This dude's probably going to put up 3 touchdowns and 300 yards in every single game. He's already has over 1,000 passing yards, and it's at like 9 or 10 touchdowns on the year already. I mean, my God, he is just... People said that he might be better than he was last year, and I was one of the people that rolled my eyes. I'm like, how can you get better than 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns? This is how you get better. He is on pace to shatter that by a lot. He is on pace to have one of the greatest quarterback seasons ever, after already having one of the greatest quarterback seasons ever last year. He might have the season as a quarterback. It's just crazy, and the Chiefs are just unstoppable with him right now. The only team that can stop the Chiefs right now is the Patriots, in my opinion. That's the only team. But it's just too much for anybody to overcome. And for the Ravens, I don't think this is like a referendum on them, on who they are as a team. Like I said, with the Raiders, the Chiefs are going to do this to everybody. They're going to make you look silly defensively. And Lamar Jackson and that offense, it just isn't ready to compete with Patrick Mahomes. And that's not a major knock on them. Nobody's really ready to compete with this kind of offense. But once again, Chiefs win this one 33-28. Chiefs move to 3-0, stay undefeated. Ravens fall to 2-1. All right, moving on to the first of our late games. Giants at Buccaneers. Giants win this one 32-31. Giants get their first win of the year, go to 1-2. Bucks fall to 1-2, and in my opinion, this was game of the weekend. This was fun to watch. This game literally had everything. I'm talking Saquon Barkley gets hurt. You had a star rookie make his debut and etch his name in the Giants' folklore forever. Jameis Winston coming out and balling out. Bruce Arians doing something insanely stupid late in the fourth quarter. And it all comes down to a kick that gets shanked on a kicker who had been pretty good for most of the day. This game literally had everything. But speaking of Daniel Jones, the Giants rookie, he scrambled for a 7-yard touchdown to put the Giants ahead 32-31 with 1:16 left in the fourth quarter. And he showed on that one play on the mobility that Eli Manning just doesn't have anymore, or never really had. Daniel Jones had 2 rushing touchdowns in this game. Eli Manning apparently has had 7 his entire career. Daniel Jones could single-handedly eclipse that in a couple games. I had heard about his mobility as a quarterback, but I had never seen it until today. And let me tell you what, this Daniel Jones kid, he's something. But after he scores, gets the Giants to go ahead, Jameis Winston takes over, hits a beautiful pass to Mike Evans, who had a career day of his own, for 44 yards to set up the Buccaneers in field goal range. And you're just thinking, wow, Daniel Jones' debut is going to be spoiled by this Giants defense, who once again is letting this team down. And the Buccaneers get in the field goal range, and Bruce Arians, for some shocking reason, takes the delay of game penalty to back the kick up. He said after the game that he felt that Matthew Gay, the kicker, is better from longer distances. Okay. So they take the delay of game penalty. The kicker lines up to kick it. Misses it. Just barely to the right. Just misses it. And Daniel Jones wins his debut as a Giant. And you got to wonder, if the Buccaneers don't take that delay of game penalty, do they miss that kick? I'm not sure. I'm just saying. But going back and talking about Daniel Jones for a minute, here's his stat line. He went 23 of 36 for 336 yards, 2 touchdowns. He took 5 sacks on the day, but he also rushed for 28 yards and 2 touchdowns on 4 rush attempts. He also fumbled the ball. So only 1 turnover and a mostly pretty good day for Daniel Jones. That entire Giants team stepped up. They just felt different watching them. They felt like a completely different team. Evan Ingram also had a great day. The Giants tight end had 6 catches, 113 yards, 1 touchdown. Sterling Shepard, who came back from the concussion that we talked about on Friday's broadcast, had 7 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown. That entire Giants team stepped up with Daniel Jones, and you could just look and see how completely different they were as a team. He gives the Giants hope. Now, I'm going to be honest, I did bash the Daniel Jones pick in the draft. I mainly got onto it because I felt the Giants probably could have taken him with their second first-round pick, like at number 17 overall. But Dave Gettleman felt that he was worth the first-round pick, and if we're basing it off just one game, he was right. If you watch the preseason, this past preseason for the NFL, you would know Daniel Jones was a better quarterback than Eli Manning, and it was plain as day. And it was plain as day after one game. Now, Daniel Jones is not always going to play like this. All right? He's just not. But for one day, he was a hero in New York. He gives them hope. And that's something that the Giants franchise has not had in years, since like 2016. The last time that they had a winning season. They have hope for the first time in forever. And speaking of the Giants, and this is going to put a major damper on things, Saquon Barkley suffered a high ankle sprain in the second quarter, left the game, and depending on who you listen to is going to determine on what they say he's going to be out for. Some people say 4 to 6 weeks. I've heard some people say 4 to 8 weeks. So he's going to be out for a while. And Wayne Goldman, their backup running back, is probably going to take up a majority of the snaps. But the mobility of Daniel Jones is really going to help with that. That could really help open up that offense. He's not going to be a guy who rushes for 100 yards, but you know what? When the play breaks down and the middle of the field is open, he can take off and pick up like 7 or 8 yards. That is something they did not have with Eli Manning, but it's something they have now. Early on in this game, it was all Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was up they were up 28 28-10 at the half. After 3 first-half touchdowns by Mike Evans and Jameis Winston, Jameis Winston finished the day 23 of 37 for 380 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, 4 sacks. The Giants' defense was getting after him today. They felt different watching it, even though they gave up 31 points. They did make some plays to help keep the team in it. And Mike Evans, like I said, a career day, 8 catches, 190 yards, and 3 touchdowns, all in the first half. You're used to Tampa Bay offense not showing up, but they absolutely showed up in this game. Outside of that one ugly interception that we're going to get to in a second, Jameis Winston played brilliantly in this game. And so did Mike Evans. And it just sucks that, from their perspective, that they had such a great day offensively, that it was probably one of their best games together, and they end up losing the game because their kicker situation is still costing them games, and that's something that's costed them games for years. But get this. So Tampa Bay was up 28-10 at the half. That means the Giants are down by 18 points. Eli Manning in his career was 0-44 in games where he trailed by 18 points. 0-44. And Daniel Jones came all the way back to win the game. The Giants outscored Tampa Bay 22-3 in the second half. When you get outscored by that much, you're losing the game. I just hate to break it to you. The Tampa Bay defense, who had been solid for the first 2 weeks, completely fell apart. They just allowed Daniel Jones to do whatever he wanted against them. And even when there was tight coverage, like in the first half, there was this pass by Jones to Evan Ingram, and he made this insane one-handed catch that isn't being talked about enough so far this week over the defender. And that's just another example of how this team stepped up around Daniel Jones. And he provided a spark that made this team better. Because make no mistake, the Giants are now a better team with Daniel Jones at quarterback. But in the fourth quarter, I think it was in the fourth quarter, I know it was in the second half, but there was this moment where Jameis Winston steps up in the pocket and he just airmails this ugly interception to the Giants, and you're thinking, oh God, here comes the Tampa Bay second half blow up. Jameis Winston's going to start turning the ball over. And the Giants get the ball, and then Daniel Jones gets hit, and he fumbles. And the Buccaneers get the ball right back. And outside of that, it was a mostly clean game for both teams. There were no turnovers and all that. But speaking of a Tampa Bay defense that I say fell apart, Shaquille Barrett, the defensive lineman for the Buccaneers, had 4 sacks in this game. 4 sacks in this game alone. And remember, Daniel Jones was sacked 5 times. Shaquille Barrett had 4 of those. And he leads the NFL currently in sacks. He already has 8 on his own through 3 weeks. Shaquille Barrett is a monster. But like I said, Daniel Jones makes this team better. And I think the best image after the game was after Matthew Gay missed the kick and the Giants win it, watching Saquon Barkley hobble across the field on one leg. His leg is in a, not his leg, his foot's in a cast and he's on crutches and he's hobbling across the field to go celebrate with his team. It's just the first time in a while you could look at the Giants and say they're happy. The Giants fans are happy after this win, excluding what happened to Saquon. There's this just moment of joy where everything was right for the first time in years. There was hope. Just for one moment, there was hope. And for Giants fans, that's everything. Now we're going to see how good Daniel Jones can be, next week. It's not always going to be this good and this shining for him. He's not always going to, have 2 touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, and throw for almost 350 yards a game. But he makes them better. And it's his team now. So, moving on, going from one backup quarterback taking over to another one who might take over, we have the Panthers at Cardinals, and the Panthers win this one 38-20. Panthers get their first win of the year, go to 1-2. Cardinals still winless, fall to 0-2-1. And as we talked about in the beginning of this podcast about an hour ago, yeah, we're going a little long today. Woo! Cam Newton has the Linz-Frantic injury, so it went from... They really held it out till Friday before announcing Kyle Allen would be the starter for the Panthers, to saying the next Monday after the game, yeah, Cam's not going to play week 4, and he might not play for a couple weeks. And I really think that's because of what Kyle Allen did in this game. Kyle Allen flat out out-dueled Kyler Murray. Here's Kyle Allen's stat line. You ready for this one? 19 of 26, 261 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 sacks. 4 touchdowns. All right. You know why that's important? Because in this game, the Panthers had their first passing touchdown of the season. Their first 2 weeks, they had not had a passing touchdown. Kyle Allen had 4 in this game alone. And like I said, he's already been named the starter for week 4 against Houston, and presumably for a couple weeks after that. But the entire Panthers team stepped up around Kyle Allen. Just like the Giants stepped up with Daniel Jones, the Panthers stepped up with Kyle Allen. Christian McCaffrey had 24 rush attempts for 153 yards and a touchdown. The Panthers defense had 8 sacks in this game, 2 interceptions on Kyler Murray, who finished 30 of 43 for 173 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was nice to see that the Arizona offense could, score outside of the fourth quarter, which is what they did. They scored in the first quarter, and I think they did it again in the third quarter. But it was just too much. Kyle Allen flat out out-dueled the number 1 overall pick and former Heisman winner, and Kyler Murray, who, remember we talked about on Friday, these two were former teammates at Texas A&M University, and Kyle Allen beat out Kyler Murray for the starting job at the beginning of the year. Kyle Allen got benched for Kyler Murray halfway through the year. Kyle Allen transfers to Houston. Kyler Murray eventually goes on to Oklahoma, and now they're playing each other this past Sunday, and Kyle Allen beats him handedly. But speaking of defenses, the Carolina Panthers defense was excellent in this game. The Arizona Cardinals defense was atrocious. And I think we have a fair barometer on what they're going to be this year. The Arizona defense is bad, but in an area they're specifically bad at is against tight ends. They have struggled specifically at guarding tight ends. Week 1, T.J. Hawkinson with the Lions. He had over 130 yards and a touchdown. Week 2 against Baltimore, Mike Andrews. It's either Mike or Mark Andrews. I can't remember. I don't have his name in front of me. Over 100 yards and a touchdown. And this game, Greg Olsen, the Panthers tight end, 6 catches, 75 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Like, that's the area where the defense is struggling. It's just so odd that tight ends are apparently the kryptonite to this Arizona Cardinal defense. But they're just going to be bad this year. The defense for this team is going to be bad, and Kyler Murray is going to make plays offensively. And it's just not going to be enough to overcome how bad that defense is. Like we mentioned on Friday's podcast, the Cardinals' defense is one of the worst in the league right now. And when Kyler Murray puts up a bad game like this, it's not going to help things. The Cardinals were in it for most of the game, but Murray had a late third quarter interception that basically sealed things. Panthers get the ball back, score, and it's suddenly out of reach for the Cardinals. The Cardinals are not a winning team. Kyler Murray is going to make their offense watchable, but they're not going to win a bunch of games. You're probably looking at a team that wins like 5 games this year and gets lucky because they had the ball last in a shootout kind of thing. You see progression in their offense. They're getting better each week. I mean, week 1, they didn't score until the fourth quarter. Week 2, they got a bit better and had better production, but stalled in the red zone. This week, they were able to get into the end zone outside of the fourth quarter, so that was really nice. But we just have to accept the fact that the Cardinals are not going to be a good team this year. Murray will be fun to watch, and he is fun to watch, and they're getting better offensively. But that defense is going to be a major liability. Another note out of this game, Cardinals cut veteran wide receiver Michael Crabtree Monday, who, if I'm remembering correctly, he really hasn't done much in that offense so far, which is probably why they cut him. But going back to Kyle Allen, like we said, Kyle Allen, threw 4 touchdowns in this game. First passing touchdowns all year for Carolina. And think about if Kyle Allen had gone out there and thrown like 3 interceptions, 150 yards total on the day. They probably would have tried to rush Cam Newton back to get healthy. But since Kyle Allen balled out and showed that he can play right now, they're telling Cam, hey, go get healthy. Don't worry about it. But think about this. What if Kyle Allen goes out next week against a Houston defense that isn't that good and balls out again? And does it again? I'm just saying, stranger things have happened in the NFL. We never thought Colin Kaepernick was going to replace Alex Smith, and then he did. We didn't think Dak Prescott was going to replace Tony Romo, and then he did. Strange things can happen, and we're sitting here like 4 weeks from now, and Kyle Allen has a bunch of touchdowns and is red hot. Cam Newton's job might be in jeopardy. I'm just saying. I think it's worth at least considering. Because the entire Carolina Panthers offense looked completely different with Kyle Allen at quarterback. They looked fantastically different. And I'm sure everybody down there is happy about that. Because, once again, the Panthers had no passing touchdowns until this game with Kyle Allen. So I think it's something to keep an eye on. So if Kyle Allen goes out next week and throws 5 interceptions, you can consider the story dead. But if he goes out and balls out, I think it's worth keeping an eye on. All right, moving on to our next game, Saints at Seahawks. Saints win this one 33-27. Saints improve to 2-1. Seahawks take their first loss on the season, fall to 2-1 as well. No Drew Brees, no problem for the Saints offense, who just hit Seattle with a super heavy dose of Alvin Kamara, who had 161 total yards of offense. He had 16 rushes for 69 yards and a touchdown, then 9 catches for 92 yards and a touchdown. So yeah, 162 total yards for Alvin Kamara. But for the most part in this game, the Saints offense was ultra conservative. They weren't doing a whole lot. They weren't really throwing the ball downfield. Teddy Bridgewater, to his credit, he finished 19 of 27 for 177 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. But it just felt like the Saints weren't doing anything super risky with it. They just let Kamara take over, which is really good because they really needed him to step up if they're going to be riding this with Teddy Bridgewater. And remember all that talk throughout last week of how Sean Payton might run the 2-quarterback system? It felt like they didn't even need Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill got 5 snaps in this game? Not more than usual. So you don't have to worry about Taysom Hill taking snaps from Teddy Bridgewater, but it's just the Saints can't run this kind of offense next week against Dallas, who's averaging 31 points a game. They're going to have to take risks. They're going to have to push the ball downfield. They're going to have to get tricky with it. But it worked in this game. It worked in this game. For the Seahawks, however, it just felt like Russell Wilson was having to do it all yet again for this team. The running game got no help. Chris Carson is having a fumbling issue in Seattle. Russell Wilson finished 32 of 50 for 406 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had a really good day for, putting the entire team on his back. He had 7 rushes for 51 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Seahawks had 107 rushing yards, and Russell Wilson had almost half of that on his own. Tyler Lockett, their wide receiver, had 11 catches for 154 yards and a touchdown. But yeah, it just felt like Russell Wilson was having to do everything on his own, and he almost did complete the comeback. I mean, my God, Seattle outscored New Orleans 20-6 in the 4th quarter. So yeah, Russell Wilson was trying to bring him back on his own. He just couldn't. He just didn't have enough time. Maybe if he had one more drive, maybe he could have done it. But remember last week when we talked about how the Saints had a bunch of sacks coming into this game and the Seattle offensive line had given up 8 sacks? There wasn't a single sack in this game. Neither quarterback got sacked, which really helped him out, especially for Teddy Bridgewater making his first start in years after that horrific leg injury years ago. And like I said, the Saints were conservative, and it worked. It worked for this one game. They're going to have to be a bit more risky going forward if they want to keep afloat. But remember, after all that talk of, how can the Saints stay afloat with Teddy Bridgewater? We're 1 game in, and the Saints are alone at the top of their division at 2-1. I know it's week 3. I'm just saying. Teddy Bridgewater can still play in this league. People forgot about that. And after all that talk of people saying maybe Taysom Hill should start, how about y'all shut up and get to the back of the line? Because Teddy Bridgewater can still play. We're going to see how much he can still play come this Sunday night when they take on Dallas in New Orleans, because Teddy's going to have to start slinging it. But once again, New Orleans wins this one 33-27, but I am a little concerned about that New Orleans defense. They seem to have trouble with fourth quarter leads. Remember week 1 Monday night when they allowed Deshaun Watson to take the lead back super late in the fourth quarter? And now in this one, they almost blew it, gave up 20 points in the fourth quarter. I'm just saying, just keep an eye on that Saints defense. If it comes down to them having to protect the lead in the fourth quarter Sunday night against Dallas, things might get weird. All right, moving on to our next game. Steelers at 49ers. 49ers win this one 24-20. 49ers moved to 3-0 for the first time since 1998 when Steve Young was their quarterback. And the Steelers fall to 0-3 for the first time since 2000. This was a very close game throughout for the entirety of the game. Late in the game, Jimmy Garoppolo throws a 5-yard touchdown pass to Dante Pettis with 1:15 left in the game to take the lead back. And Mason Rudolph and the Steelers get the ball back, can't do anything with it, turn the ball over, and San Francisco moves on to 3-0 going into their Week 4 bye week. But I'm telling you, the Steelers had this game. San Francisco turned the ball over 5 times. 5 times, and they still lost this game. If you're turning the ball over 5 times, you deserve to lose. And if you get 5 turnovers in a game and you don't win, something is wrong with your team. And I'm going to tell you exactly what's wrong with the Steelers, especially in this game. Their offense is still bad, even with Mason Rudolph. The Steelers completed 2 passes past the line of scrimmage in this game. Mason Rudolph went 14 of 27 for 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, and a sack. So like I said, 2 passes out of those 14 were past the line of scrimmage. But they both went for touchdowns. One of them was a catch and run by Juju Smith-Schuster, who went for 3 for 81 and a touchdown. And another one was like a 30-yard touchdown pass by Mason Rudolph. But the point is that the Steelers' offense is completely lost right now. They have no running game. Mason Rudolph isn't pushing the ball downfield a lot. It's all around. It's either behind or at the line of scrimmage with his passes. And when you do that, a defense like the 49ers, who had been good for the first 2 weeks, is going to come up and start teeing off on you. Get this. In total yards, the 49ers outgained the Steelers 436 to 239. Over almost 200 more total yards than the Steelers in this game. The Steelers' defense is just not getting the job done. Even with Minkah Fitzpatrick in there, that they traded for the other week with a first-round pick, he shined in his debut with the Steelers. He had 1 pick. He forced a fumble. But I'm going to ask you, Pittsburgh, was it worth a pick that's probably going to be in the top 10? Heck, it could maybe even be a top 5 pick. I mean, I'm going to ask you. I know he's cheap. You're getting him super cheap, and he's going to be a great player, but your team is going to be very bad right now. And you know what? You're used to consistently great, so you're probably not going to like the taste of a 5-win season shoved down your throat, but that's what's looking like is going to happen. Oh, you thought last year was a down year? The year you won 9 games and barely missed the playoffs? You thought that was your down year? Nah, this is the down year. This right here is the down year. Steeler fans, just accept it. Just accept the fact that your team is not going to be good this year. The sooner you come to terms with that, the better. And I would say, hope for a good draft pick, but you traded that away to Miami. So the worse you do, the better the draft pick for Miami gets. So that's not comforting, is it? like I said, the Steelers are lost right now. But the 49ers, I was really impressed by them. I was impressed by their ability to really hang in there and win this game. In a game you turned the ball over 5 times. If I remember, 2 of those turnovers came in the red zone. So you know that's not happy for head coach Kyle Shanahan, but the 49ers are looking interesting. I mean, their offense, headed up by that running game who sounds like they're going to get Tevin Coleman back after their bye week, adds just another running back to that stable that's just lighting the league on fire. Get this, the 49ers are averaging over 400 yards per game, and they're averaging over 170 rush yards per game. Their offense is putting up yards, and they're giving them a chance to win, and that defense is holding teams down. I will say, though, that the 49ers offense has been a little turnover happy, because right now they're tied with the Dolphins and Bengals for the lead league in giveaways at 8. So hopefully the 49ers can cut down on all the sloppiness and be better going forward. But for the final stat line on the day, Jimmy Garoppolo, the 49ers quarterback, went 23 of 32, 277 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks, and 1 sack. Didn't play great, but when they needed him to late in the fourth quarter, he makes that play to Dante Pettis to win the game, and it was a really beautiful pass. It really was. And Jeff Wilson Jr., one of their stable of running backs, went 8 rushes for 18 yards, but 2 rushing touchdowns. They just have a pure rotation of running backs right now in San Francisco that's just pounding teams into submission. And that helps take the pressure off Jimmy G to help him make better plays. But right now, the 49ers are going into their bye week at 3-0, and none of us thought that was a thing coming into the season. The 49ers are the feel-good story of the NFC, and the Bills are the feel-good story of the AFC. And, you know, they got some tough games coming up. I know the 49ers are playing some bigger teams coming up, and the Bills have the Pats. So we're going to see how good these teams are in the next couple weeks if they're not just a mirage, you know, one of those September mirages where a team looks good then collapses and ends up as a 6-win team. Because I'll tell you what, it's more fun when the Bills and 49ers are good, because it's nice to have fresh blood in the playoff conversation at the end of the year when they're playing meaningful December football. It's more fun than just having the same old, oh, here come the Steelers. Oh, boy. Or, you know, here comes another NFC team that we've seen 50 times before in the playoffs. It's more fun when these teams that aren't always in it suddenly get hot and get in it. It makes it more fun. But once again, 49ers win this one, 24-20, move to 3-0. Steelers fall to 0-3. And that Monday night game against Cincinnati coming up in Week 4 is suddenly a must-win for both teams, because they both think they can salvage their seasons. All right, moving on to Texans at Chargers. Houston wins this one 27-20. Houston goes to 2-1, and the Chargers fall to 1-2. This game in LA. And Deshaun Watson, the Houston quarterback, completes the second half comeback after trailing 17-7 at the half. Rattles off 20 unanswered points to close on a 20-6 run for the Texans. Watson's second half pass to Jordan Akins, their tight end, where Watson scrambles out of the pocket, looking one way, and then he just lofts it to Jordan Akins, who scrambles and scores a touchdown to go ahead. And like we mentioned, I think a week or two ago on this podcast, Deshaun Watson is going to keep the Texans in games. Every game that Deshaun Watson has lost in the regular season has been decided by one possession. So he's going to keep them in games. And if you're up at the half, you better know he's going to start making that comeback. And Deshaun Watson played brilliantly in this game. He went 25 of 34 for 351 yards and 3 touchdowns, only 2 sacks. Remember, this Houston offensive line was averaging 5 sacks coming into this game, and they only give up 2. And look what happens when you protect your quarterback. He makes tremendous plays and wins the game for you. Jordan Akins, the Houston tight end that we just mentioned, had 3 receptions, 73 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Houston really just looked so impressive in the second half, and it was just another instance of the Chargers blowing a second half lead. They've done it in every game so far this season. They did it in week 1 against the Colts when they were up double digits at the half. The Colts come all the way back and force overtime. Last week against the Lions, I know it wasn't a big lead, it was only single digits, but the Chargers were up in the fourth quarter until Matthew Stafford goes on a drive and hits Kenny Golladay in the end zone to take the lead, and they win the game in the fourth quarter. And then in this game, you're up double digits at halftime for the second time this season, and you blow it. You're outscored 20-6 in the second half, and I'm sitting there looking at the Chargers. I'm like, guys, you're better than this. You have so much talent across the board. How are you getting manhandled in these games and blowing leads? I really think that defense has become a liability for a team that was one of the best in the AFC last season. Phillip Rivers tried his best to, keep this team in it. And Keenan Allen set a career high in yards for him. Phillip Rivers finished 31 of 46, 318 yards, 2 touchdowns, got sacked 5 times. His offensive line did him no favors in this game. And he had a costly second half fumble that the Texans scooped up and were able to score off of. They didn't scoop and score it, but they were able to get some points off of it. And Keenan Allen went 13 catches for 183 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like I said, set a career high in yards. But it just wasn't enough. The Chargers get the ball back late, and Phillip Rivers is driving, but he's just unable to convert on fourth down. And another just super frustrating loss for the Chargers already this season. I mean, golly. But for the Chargers, they just keep shooting themselves in the foot. That's the problem. They're hurt everywhere on both sides of the ball. They keep having costly penalties that are wiping big plays and touchdowns off the board and turnovers. Like I said, the Phillip Rivers fumble in the third quarter really was costly for them. He didn't throw an interception in the fourth quarter like he did the first 2 games, but the fumble in the third quarter did not help things. So right now, the Chargers are just constantly shooting themselves in the foot and making things worse. But like I said, the Chargers O-line did no favors for Phillip. 5 sacks, and it looked like he was playing with the Texans O-line, but the Texans protected Watson well, and look what it did. It did wonders for them. And all of a sudden, the Texans are sitting there at 2-1, and Deshaun Watson looks great when he's protected. And the Chargers are falling apart at the seams here. But they have the Dolphins coming up this weekend, so you would hope they wouldn't blow a double-digit halftime lead to them. If you do, I think you fold the franchise. But that sounds like a get-right game for the Chargers. Get them back to 500. And they got games against the Steelers coming up, too, who look like another lost team. And that could really help the Chargers right now because they are just banged up everywhere. And they just really need a game. They just need a win is what they need. After dropping back-to-back heartbreaking games. All right, we're going to go quick here since we're already at an hour and a half. But Rams at Browns. Rams win this one 20-13. Rams stay undefeated 3-0. Browns fall to 1-2. The Rams intercept Mayfield by John Johnson III with 27 seconds left on 4th and goal from the 4 after a very bizarre goal line try by the Browns. I mean, they got down there. They have all 3 timeouts, and they're on the 4-yard line, and they don't run Nick Chubb once. They don't even look Odell Beckham Jr.'s way. They just keep trying to force it to their tight end, their backup tight end who got promoted. And I have serious questions about the play calling in Cleveland. There was also that 4th and 9 in the fourth quarter where Freddie Kitchens just does a draw play to Nick Chubb. Like, okay. It felt like he was running when he shouldn't run, and he wasn't running when he should have run. It was weird. The Browns' offense is flat out insulting right now. They're 22nd in yards per game, behind the Bengals and Broncos and Jags. Teams that have combined for 1 win. And they're 26th in points right now. They're not just bad on offense, they're inept offensively. That's even worse. The Browns' defense was able to keep them in it. They had a completely new secondary with all new starters in there. And they were able to keep the Rams at bay. The Rams still seem to be figuring things out offensively. There was some miscommunication at points, and there was that costly fourth-quarter interception by Jared Goff, who set up the drive that allowed Cleveland to get to the goal line. But right now, the Browns' offense is just bad. And to have that much talent and be this bad is just so insulting. And I don't understand the problem. Like, Freddie Kitchens was their offensive coordinator after they had the coaching change midway last season, and he was the play caller then, and everything was great. They were slinging it around, they were pushing the ball downfield, but now it just feels like they're ultra conservative, and he's second-guessing himself when he's the head coach, and he's still calling the plays. And I don't know if there's some disconnect with him and Todd Monken, their new offensive coordinator. I just don't know. But right now the Browns' offense is bad, and it's only going to get worse. They got to play the Ravens next week. The Patriots are coming up soon. Things are going to go from bad to worse for this Cleveland team if they don't figure this out right now. But looking at the Rams, their defense is solid, which is allowing their offense time to figure things out. Jared Goff went 24 of 38 for 269 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had those 2 picks, like I mentioned, 2 sacks. Brandon Cooks, 8 receptions, 112 yards. Cooper Kupp, who is solidifying himself as the number 1 receiver in that room, 11 catches, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was phenomenal in this game. He does not look like a guy who tore his ACL last year. Cooper Kupp is awesome. But then you look at the Browns. Baker Mayfield went 18 of 36, so 50% of his passes, 195 yards, a touchdown, a pick, and 3 sacks. And Nick Chubb went 23 rushes, 96 yards. Baker was under duress a lot last night, and he made some bad reads, but his offensive line is doing him no favors. Those tackles on that line are horrendously bad. And it feels like he's running on almost every single play. But how you get to the 4-yard line and you don't even run Nick Chubb once, you have all 3 timeouts, and you don't run him once, is beyond me. And how you don't even look Odell Beckham Jr.'s way, how you don't even throw him a fade or a jump ball, is beyond me. He was one-on-one with Aqib Talib. I'm not saying Aqib Talib's a bad player, but one-on-one in the red zone with the game on the line, you go to Odell Beckham Jr. That should be simple, but apparently it's not in Cleveland. And the Browns are at 1-2, and for a team that had so much offseason hype, they have flat out under-delivered, and it is bad right now in Cleveland. All right, moving on to our last game, the Monday night game against Chicago at the Washington football team. Bears flat out dominant in this one, went 31-15, and it was all Bears from the word go. Bears defense just shut down Washington. 6 sacks, 3 interceptions, 2 fumbles. And one of those interceptions was by Clinton Dix in the first quarter, who took it all the way back for a touchdown. Khalil Mack had 2 of those 6 sacks against Case Keenum. And it was Case Keenum's first interception of the entire year. He had been playing good up until this game, but the Bears defense just came out and suffocated him. But here's the more important part. The Bears offense finally showed up. Mitchell Trubisky went 25 of 31, 231 yards, 3 touchdowns, all in the first half, to Taylor Gabriel. Trubisky had 1 pick, 3 sacks. Taylor Gabriel had 6 catches, 75 yards, and those 3 first-half touchdowns. In fact, they all came in the second quarter. All 3 of those touchdowns came in the second quarter. The Bears' offense did a lot of hurry-up tempo, quick stuff, and it feels like they finally figured things out. Remember, coming into this game, they had only scored 1 touchdown through 2 weeks. That's not good. But in this game, they had 3. It was 28-3 at half. The game was over at halftime. The Bears kick a field goal in the second half. Washington scores some consolation points. And it ends up being 31-15. Case Keenum finished 30 of 43 for 332 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like I mentioned, the turnovers and 4 sacks. Paul Richardson, the wide receiver, 8 catches, 83 yards, 1 touchdown. It was just a bad night for Washington, who's 0-3, and they're in trouble right now. And I just want to point out something that the Monday Night Football crew said. They openly asked, is it time to turn to Dwayne Haskins, even though Case Keenum had been playing well until this game. But here's the thing. When your quarterback is out there getting literally German suplexed by the Bears defense, your first instinct should not be, hey, let's put in the 3rd-string rookie. That should not be your instinct. Your starting quarterback is literally getting murdered at the 50-yard line by Khalil Mack. Your instinct should not be put in a rookie and see what happens. I think Dwayne Haskins is going to be the future of that Washington franchise, but he's not ready yet. Case Keenum is still playing well despite this one game. The Bears defense is going to make everyone look silly and stupid. That's just what it is. But the Washington defense has been bad. I mean, the Bears were averaging 9 points a game coming into this, and Mitch Trubisky looked great. There's no way getting around it. Greg Mineski, the Washington defensive coordinator, his seat's probably pretty hot right now. I've heard a lot of talk about that so far since last night's game. But Washington just looks lost on all sides of the ball. I mean, Case Keenum can put up points and they can average 24 points a game, but their defense is just not doing anything. And they're the basement team in the NFC East right now. It was the Giants. Now it's the Washington football team. And then looking at Chicago, who's 2-1, despite all the talk about their offense, they're 2-1. And all I ask for Chicago, just show some consistency offensively. That's all I ask. Just show some consistency. Because they'll have a game like this, and then they're going to go back to Mitch Trubisky throwing for 150 yards and barely scoring 10 points. So, like I said, Bears win this one 31-15. Bears 2-1. Washington falls to 0-3. And just keep an eye on Jay Gruden. His job isn't the safest in the world. And if they start out 0-5, he's going to be in a lot of hot water. All right, so that's it for our Week 3 recap, and then we're going to quickly get to the Thursday Night Football preview, Eagles at Packers. Like we mentioned when we talked about the Packers earlier, Packers are tied for third best in the league with 12 sacks and lead the league in turnover differential. That means they're getting turnovers and they're not turning over the ball. Packers offense has to get better like we talked about. They're 28th in total offense behind the Titans. They can score points, but it seems like only in the first half. And like I mentioned, the Packers defense has not allowed a first quarter touchdown this entire season. And that really feels like these two teams are like perfectly made to play each other. The Packers offense really only seems to show up in the first half and score points then. And the Eagles feel like a team that doesn't show up until the second half and just airmails the first half. So think about that for a second. You got two teams that are just kind of two different versions of each other. So think about it. If the Packers do what they've been doing these past 2 weeks and score 24 points in the first half, and the Eagles are down 24-10, and Carson Wentz tries to make a comeback against that really solid defense with only Nelson Aguilar and Zach Ertz, it's not going to be pretty. It's not. The Eagles have to start fast in this game. They cannot do another slow start and be down by double digits for the third time this season in this game. They just can't. The Eagles desperately need this win like I talked about. They have games coming up, that 3-game road stint against the Vikings, Dallas, and the Bills. The Eagles need this win. And they need to be less sloppy. They can't have 9 drops in this game. They can't afford the fumbles. They can't afford to be down double digits at halftime against this defense. And if they get down double digits, Mike Pettin and that defense is going to tee off on the Eagles against a banged-up offensive line, and Carson Wentz might be in for a long night in Lambeau Field. Like I've talked about before, on Thursday Night Football, I usually always tend to go with the home team because it's a short week, but even more so with the injuries for Philadelphia and the sloppy play so far, I've got the Packers winning this one. And I just don't know with the Eagles. They have to be more of a presence in the first half. They just have to be going forward. They can't keep forcing themselves to crawl out of a hole with all of these injuries and drops and turnovers. They're just dooming themselves before the game ever really gets started. So that's it for the Tuesday edition of the NFLandU podcast. Like I said, Packers win on Thursday night. And next time we talk, it'll be Friday, so we'll do the recap of Thursday night and then preview the rest of Week 4. Probably won't be as long as this one. We went really long today, and my throat is burning right now. So thanks for stopping by, and see you all Friday. Bye.